A burned-out mechanic on the edge of nowhere. A terrified woman with secrets worth killing for. When Joel Carter picks up a mysterious hitchhiker, he doesn't realize she's the heiress to one of the world's most corrupt corporate dynasties, and on the run from an arranged marriage, armed security, and evidence that could expose billion-dollar crimes. The sky above Route 89 was a canvas of swirling dust clouds and distant lightning flashes. Joel Carter gripped the wheel of his sputtering blue pickup, barely noticing the Arizona sunset bleeding through the windshield. His thoughts were a mess of unpaid bills, lost business licenses, and memories of a home that no longer existed. Once a respected mechanic in Mesa, Joel was now a man living off coffee, gas station snacks, and the last drops of his pride. He saw her just before mile marker 117, a lone figure on the shoulder, soaked by the drizzle that had just begun falling. She stood still, rigid, with her thumb barely raised and her head turning constantly, eyes scanning for threats. She wore a pale beige coat, far too large for her frame, and boots that looked more like they belonged at a fashion gala than on a desert roadside. Joel's instinct screamed, "Keep driving." This world, as he had learned the hard way, didn't reward kindness. But then she turned toward his headlights. In that second her face lit up, half hope, half fear. Her eyes caught his, and something unspoken passed between them. He hit the brakes. As she climbed into the truck without a word, Joel didn't ask for explanations. He just drove, and unknowingly stepped into the middle of a storm far bigger than the one outside. The truck's old heater coughed and hissed as it pushed lukewarm air into the cab. Joel kept his eyes on the winding two-lane road, though he couldn't ignore the presence beside him. The girl, Elena, she'd finally said, sat with her shoulders hunched, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Raindrops traced lines down the side windows, blurring the passing cactus and desert rock. Joel tried to place her, late 20s, maybe younger. Her face was clean but tired, framed by thick auburn hair now matted from the rain. Her coat was second-hand, its buttons mismatched. Yet those boots, polished leather with precise stitching, told a different story. They weren't bought at a thrift store. They were designer, expensive, the kind that didn't match her fear. "You got somewhere in mind?" Joel asked, keeping his tone casual. "Just north," she said, "anywhere quiet." He let the silence stretch. The road between Phoenix and the Utah border was long and empty, a place where people disappeared by design. Joel had picked up a lot of strays over the years. Runaways, drifters, people trying to leave something behind. But this one felt different. They stopped at a rundown gas station an hour later. Joel filled the tank while Elena slipped into the bathroom, head down, avoiding cameras. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Joel's gut twisted. Just as he considered driving off, she returned, dried off, calmer, a faint resolve in her step. She handed him a coffee. "We should keep moving," Joel nodded, puzzled by the shift in her demeanor. He didn't know it yet, but something in her had changed. She had chosen to trust him, if only a little. It was a start. Joel couldn't sleep, not deeply, not with questions pressing on his mind like weight on a broken suspension coil. The truck was parked in the back lot of a 24-hour truck stop just outside Page. Elena was curled up on the passenger seat, knees tucked under her coat, arms folded across her chest. She slept lightly, twitching at every noise. Joel, meanwhile, stared at the worn backpack she had tucked between the seats. It had a frayed strap and a faint bloodstain near the zipper. Details most people would miss, but Joel noticed everything. Years under car hoods had trained him to spot the small things, and something about that bag nagged at him. He glanced at Elena, still breathing deeply. Asleep, he pulled the backpack onto his lap and unzipped it. Inside were 3 items. A wad of neatly stacked $100 bills held by a red rubber band, a cheap burner phone with no missed calls, and a thick manila envelope sealed with an official-looking gold crest. Joel's brow furrowed. The logo read, Ward Global Holdings. His fingers trembled as he opened the envelope. Legal papers, contracts, financial records. But one sheet stopped him cold. A prenup agreement bearing the name Elena Ward and her groom-to-be Victor Halston, heir to a shipping conglomerate. Joel exhaled sharply. So she wasn't just running, she was escaping. He put everything back, zipped the bag carefully, and set it where he found it. When Elena returned with 2 coffees and a bag of trail mix, Joel acted like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The sun peeked over the sandstone cliffs as the truck rolled north through a narrow canyon pass. Joel hadn't spoken in over an hour, his mind replaying the documents he had seen. Elena shifted beside him, her posture tighter than usual, as if she could sense his change in demeanor. Finally, Joel broke the silence. "You ever gonna tell me what's really going on?" he asked without turning his head. Elena didn't answer at first. The truck hummed steadily along the asphalt, the tires devouring the empty miles. Joel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I saw the envelope," he said flatly. "The one with your name on it." Her breath hitched. He glanced at her, catching the flicker of fear in her eyes, followed by something else, resignation. "I figured you might," she murmured. Joel pulled the truck onto a dirt overlook, killed the engine, and faced her fully. "You're Elena Ward, as in Ward Global Holdings. You're supposed to be walking down an aisle right now, not hitching rides with mechanics." She looked away, jaw clenched. "It was never a real choice. The marriage was a business merger. Halston's family is dirty. Arms deals, trafficking. I found files I wasn't supposed to see, evidence." Joel leaned back in his seat, running a hand over his unshaven jaw. "So you ran," she nodded. "I'm not just running from a wedding, Joel. I'm running from them. If they find me, they'll either drag me back or make sure I never speak again." Joel stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned the key and the truck rumbled to life. "I'll get you to Flagstaff," he muttered. "But after that, I'm out." But even as he said the words, something deep inside him said otherwise. They hadn't been back on the road for more than 2 hours when Joel noticed the black SUVs. At first he told himself it was paranoia, but they stayed in the rearview mirror through every detour and turn. The second one fell into place behind the first like it was trained. "They've found me," Elena whispered, her voice like shattered glass. "My father's private security. They're not police, but they'll act like it." Joel didn't respond. He took the next exit, veering onto a bumpy back road toward old mining towns where GPS lost signal. Dust plumed behind them. The SUVs didn't follow immediately. They were cautious, waiting for a clean shot maybe. That night they parked behind a boarded-up rest stop near the Utah border. Joel stayed awake with his hand near a crowbar. Elena sat cross-legged on the tailgate watching stars with haunted eyes. She told him more that night, how she once tried to warn someone, a journalist, and the man died in a car accident the next week. She had proof now but nowhere to take it. "I don't want to be rich," she said, almost in tears. "I want to be free." Joel understood that better than she knew, and so without asking he chose to stay. Each mile north peeled back another layer of their stories. Joel told her about losing his shop after a buyout deal went wrong. One he later realized was orchestrated by a shell company tied to Ward Global Holdings. That revelation stitched their fates tighter. Elena, despite her corporate heritage, was surprisingly grounded. She slept on motel floors, ate fast food, read maps upside down. But what Joel noticed most was her resolve. She wasn't fragile. She was forged under pressure, like steel. They talked in the quiet spaces between highway signs. She told him about her mother who once tried to leave her father and ended up in a sanitarium. She was never the same afterward. Joel told her about a little sister lost to opioids and the system that let it happen. It wasn't just running anymore. It was a crusade. They stopped at an abandoned visitor center one night. Elena spread out documents and encrypted drives across a picnic table under flashlight. "There's enough here to ruin him," she whispered. But Joel knew that meant they'd have to survive long enough to see it through, and survival was starting to look more complicated with each passing day. By the time they reached the Nevada state line, they were running on adrenaline and vending machine meals. They checked into a dingy roadside motel using cash and fake names. Elena tied her hair back and kept her head down. Joel parked the truck around the side out of view from the highway. It felt safe, for a moment, but as night fell, Joel caught sight of 2 men standing by the vending machine. Their eyes scanned the parking lot too slowly. Their shoulders were too square, military maybe, or ex-cops. One of them locked eyes with Joel. "Elena," he said sharply, turning back into the room, "we need to go now." They bolted through the bathroom window, racing through the back alley and down a ditch. Behind them, shouts echoed. Flashlights cut through the darkness like prison search beams. Joel didn't stop until they reached a grove of trees behind an industrial lot. Elena's face was scratched, her coat torn, but she was alive. "I thought we'd have more time," she whispered. "So did I," Joel said. And with that they realized their escape plan needed an upgrade, because these men weren't just tracking them, they were hunting. The next day, dirty and desperate, Joel flagged down a passing trucker near a freight yard. A burly man in his 60s rolled down the window, cigarette dangling from his lips. "You two look like hell," he said. "We need a ride north," Joel offered. "Can fix your engine in trade." The trucker, Hank, chuckled and waved them in. As Joel worked under the hood, Elena talked with Hank. He told her about his daughter, a corporate lawyer who vanished after digging too deep into her firm's finances. No charges, no answers, just gone. "Sometimes the rich don't kill you," Hank said. "They erase you." The words stuck. That night, Hank shared half his supper and pointed them to a friend in Twin Falls, someone who could decrypt Elena's flash drive. Joel didn't trust easily, but Hank's grief was real. It mirrored his own. The next morning before parting ways, Hank pressed a folding knife into Joel's palm. "Don't let them take her," he said. "People like her. We don't get many chances." Joel nodded, eyes heavy with resolve. Now it wasn't just about escape, it was about justice. Sam's warehouse sat at the edge of an old train yard. shielded by stacked shipping containers and broken fences. A genius-level coder and longtime friend of Elena's late mother, Sam had gone off-grid years ago after a data breach nearly cost him his life. He took one look at the files and whistled. This is a bomb. Shell corporations, foreign bribes, land grabs tied to displaced communities. Jesus, Elena. She sat on a metal stool, hugging her knees. Can you help us? Sam agreed to duplicate the files and promised to leak them through secure whistleblower networks. Joel didn't like him, too slick, too quick to promise safety. But they had no other option. That night they finally slept. Hope felt dangerous, but necessary. They returned from a quick store run to find the warehouse door ajar. Inside everything was gone, hard drives, laptops, the documents, even Sam. On a rusted table was a handwritten note. They offered more than loyalty. Sorry. Elena sank to the floor, fists clenched, eyes hollow. Joel kicked a metal chair across the room, rage boiling. I knew we couldn't trust him, but beneath the panic was strategy. They still had one backup. One that Joel, ever suspicious, had hidden in the truck's engine block 2 days ago. It wasn't over, not yet. They found a small riverside campground far from any highway. Joel pulled the truck under a tree, set up a fire pit, and made coffee over a portable burner. Elena sat cross-legged, hair wet from the river, face finally softening. You ever think about what you'd do if this all ended tomorrow? She asked. Yeah, Joel said. Buy back my old shop, name it after my mom. She smiled. I'd open a bookstore somewhere quiet. No glass towers, just pages. They laughed for the first time in days. That night under the stars, they kissed. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was human. And in that moment they weren't fugitives, just two people trying to breathe. Cal Monroe lived in a log cabin surrounded by forest and silence. Once a renowned investigative reporter, he had vanished after a suspicious fire killed his wife. When Elena showed him the data, his hands shook. This is the kind of story that gets people killed, he said. Already happening, Joel replied. Cal promised to leak the story through underground channels and gather backup support from old contacts. That night, as the wind rustled the trees, Joel felt a flicker of relief. They'd done it. They'd found someone who could finish what Elena started. Just before dawn, a single shot rang out, then fire. The cabin exploded in a bloom of orange and heat. Joel tackled Elena behind a truck as bullets ripped through the trees. Men moved through the smoke, armed, fast, surgical. They knew, Elena gasped. They always know, Joel said. They fled through the woods, slipping down embankments and climbing over mossy rocks. Joel took a bullet in the shoulder but kept running. By the time the forest thinned, Cal was gone. But Elena was still breathing, and that had to be enough. They hid in a barn for 2 days while Joel's wound clotted and Elena mapped a plan. If we hit Ward where he's loudest, his gala, we end this, she said. Joel stared. That's a suicide mission. We walk in, expose the files, live, everyone sees it. No more shadows. He hesitated, then nodded. They stole a catering van, stitched together disguises and set off for Seattle, one last ride. The gala pulsed with luxury. Glass chandeliers, marble staircases, laughter like champagne flutes clinking. Elena wore a caterer's apron. Joel was dressed in borrowed security gear. From the balcony she saw her father, immaculate in his tuxedo, surrounded by senators and CEOs. Victor Halston stood beside him. She clutched the USB drive hidden in her shoe and took a deep breath. Time to end it. She stepped on stage mid-speech. Sorry to interrupt, she said into the mic, gasps. I'm Elena Ward, and my father is not the man you think he is. She plugged the drive into the screen's control port. Emails, spreadsheets, recordings, it all spilled across the monitors like blood. Ward's face turned to stone. Security lunged. Joel intercepted them with a fire extinguisher and a steel chair. They ran, but the damage was done. The internet erupted. Ward Global stocks plummeted. Investigations were launched. Arrests followed. Victor fled the country. Randall Ward was placed under federal watch. Elena gave testimony through encrypted links. Joel vanished into quiet places. Their war was over. 6 months later, Joel opened a small garage by Clearwater Bay. The sea was calm. The past quieter. One day she walked in, baseball cap, jeans, new name but the same eyes. You still fix engines? She asked. He smiled. Only the broken ones. She stayed. They planted tomatoes, fixed motorcycles, read paperbacks on lazy Sundays. No headlines, no choppers overhead, just peace. Sometimes Elena would look at the ocean and smile like it was the first time she'd seen something that couldn't be bought. They had nothing left to prove, just each other. On a cloudy April morning, Joel handed her a ring he'd made from a spark plug and a silver chain. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. I don't need vows, Elena said, slipping it on. You already saved me. They stood at the edge of the water, hand in hand. The road that brought them together had been brutal. But the one ahead was finally theirs. If this story moved you, share it, subscribe, and ring the bell for more unforgettable journeys. Sometimes running away is how you finally come home.